The precise accuracy of Eugene Stoner's direct gas impingement rifle versus the legendary reliability of Mikhail Kalashnikov's long stroke piston design. AR-15 versus AK-47. Let's go. Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. Today we will be discussing one of the great debates in gun culture. I'm sure we will not put it to rest, as nobody seems to have been able to yet, but what we're discussing today is Stoner versus Kalashnikov. You know, most people have one or the other that seems to be their favorite. You're either an AK guy or an AR guy. I have a healthy appreciation for both, though I have to admit, I have a lot more experience with the AR-15 platform than I do with the AK-47, or to be more accurate, the AKM for you purists out there. But I do feel like it's something worth discussing. Like I said, I enjoy both rifles a lot. One of them is the most popular weapon in America, the M4 platform AR-15. You know, nothing really represents America and freedom, at least in guns, as much as an AR-15 does. The other one, the most popular fighting rifle in the world. There's not even a close competitor to it. And there's got to be reasons for that, right? So we're going to get to it, and we're going to have some fun with this. But please remember, like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. We are growing rapidly right now, and it's exciting to see, and that is thanks to all you. I'd like to give a special shout out to someone who comments on just about every single video, Israel Smith. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. So each one of these rifle platforms has you know, it's positives and negatives, absolutely. You know, one of them generally is more modern, and, you know, they were both developed around the same time, the early 1950s. It's when the, you know, the M16A1 came out, and it's when the original AK-47 came out. Now, what we have here are modernized versions of those. So this is technically not an AK-47, it's an AKM, which stands for the Automat Kalashnikova Modernized. And it doesn't look nearly as modernized as these. You know, the modern AR-15 that, you know, American consumers or consumers throughout the world have available to them is a much different rifle than what originally came out, than what was used, you know, in the Vietnam War era and stuff like that. There have been a lot of improvements made to both of these, but they're in general the same operating system and the same rifle. It's curious to me that, you know, what are considered mainly the two best, most popular fighting rifles in the world are, you know, designs from the late 1940s, early 1950s. That says a lot about, you know, Eugene Stoner and Mikhail Kalashnikov, you know, that there was a certain amount of genius there. You know, and the same thing for John Moses Browning with the 1911. That these things are still relevant today is pretty incredible. And so I think that they are worthy of a discussion. Absolutely. And I'm not the only one. Just about every big gun YouTube channel out there has had a discussion about these things, but I wanted you guys to get my take on it. So we're going to go through a number of categories and see kind of who comes out ahead in the end. But what it really all comes down to is what your preference is, what you are more used to, what feels more comfortable to you, what you like to run, and that's going to probably be what you choose. Now, you know, a lot of people generally think that the AR-15 is the superior weapon system. And here in America, that's probably true. We have a lot of options available to us as far as the aftermarket parts availability and stuff. But the AK-47 or the AKM is quickly catching up. I mean, if you look at what the Russians are running these days, the AK-12, it's a very, very modern fighting rifle. And it absolutely competes with the AR-M4 type platform. So we're going to get into this. Like I said, the big reason that I wanted to do this video is, you know, in the news right now, we see what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. And a lot of Americans that aren't necessarily into firearms are being exposed to what weapons are being used over there. And what we're mainly seeing are AKs. So Russia is running, you know, the AK-12, the highly modern tactical version of what this is, of the AKM. Ukraine, on the other hand, has been giving its own citizens, people that are not in the military, rifles exactly like this, with one notable exception. They run full auto. Ours in the US don't generally, unless you have a lot of money. But, you know, their regular citizens are running full auto versions of the AK right here to fight for their country. And so I felt like it was appropriate to do a video about the AK and about why it is such a popular weapon throughout the world, but also to compare it to the AR, to the M4, to what our country runs as its military's, you know, standard rifle of choice. So there's a lot of things that make a good weapon, and we're going to go into it a little bit. First thing we're going to talk about is ammunition. So this is what the AK-47 is. This is a 123 grain 7.62 by 39 steel cased, you know, rifle round. This is what the AR-15 runs. This is a 55 grain non-steel cased, brass cased 5.56 by 45, or sometimes commonly known as 223. They are technically different things, but they're the same size round, and they both run in the majority of AR-15s. So right off the bat, you can see here, the round that the AK shoots is like, the bullet itself is about twice as big as what the AR fires. Now, there's advantages and disadvantages to that. A 123 grain projectile is going to have much more knockdown power than a 55 grain projectile. But this 55 grain bullet is going to travel at a much higher speed, making it more accurate at longer distances. And believe me, this thing is plenty deadly. And there's been countless things throughout history that have shown that. But there are advantages and disadvantages to each. So let's talk about that a little bit. Generally, when it comes to accuracy, the AR-15 usually wins out. The reason for that being a few things. For one, it's much easier to mount optics. Now, I'm running a red dot on this, which is more of a, you know, close-in type of engagement optic, because this is something, my main purpose for it would be home defense. I like to take it out to the range and shoot at longer distances, but as far as what this rifle's general purpose is, a red dot is about perfect. But the thing is with a modern LPVO or even a higher powered scope, you can reach out to extremely long distances with a standard 5.56 AR-15, be very accurate, and have very deadly terminal ballistics at the end. 5.56 by 45, AR-15. Now the AK was designed more for engagements within 300 yards. The 7.62 by 39, while it'll reach out to a pretty far distance and it's much more accurate than I think most people give it credit for, being a heavy, slower moving projectile, you're gonna have more bullet drop with this. And so the sights on an AK are designed for that. They actually, it's a little ridiculous, This rear sight leaf is designed to adjust out to 1,000 yards. And basically there's little notches here and you adjust it up, which brings the front of your muzzle up so that you can have an accurate, point of aim, point of impact. The AR, much flatter shooting trajectory. So when it comes to accuracy, generally the AR-15 is considered to be more accurate. Now, when it comes to knockdown power, that's got to go to the AK. The bullet is literally twice as big. So, I don't want to get hit with either one. But that thing looks like it's going to hurt more than that one. Am I wrong? I think they're both going to hurt. But it does run a bigger bullet. Now again, advantages and disadvantages. Bigger ammo means more weight. And that's going to be true to a point with the AK. So the AK, the basic rifle, is heavier than an AR-15. This thing is wood and steel. Wood and steel. AR-15 is aluminum and polymer, which is a fancy term for plastic. So wood and steel is going to be heavier than aluminum and plastic, right? Well, you'd think so, but this is a lighter gun than my AR-15. And the reason for that is because I don't have a bunch of accessories and crazy things hanging off it like most people seem to have on their ARs. That brings me to another point though, modularity. So on an AR-15, you have a rail on the top. Picatinny rail on the top here. Now when I bought this rifle, it did not have this handguard on it. This is highly changed from the way it started. So it didn't necessarily have a system to attach accessories to up here in its, bone stock form. But it still generally comes, most of them, unless you get the carry handle model, you come with a flat top upper receiver with a Picatinny rail on it. Now that is ideal for mounting a number of different kinds of optics, whether you're going to have a magnified optic or run a red dot or holographic for more CQB style engagements. Point being, very easy to mount optics. And just by changing out a handguard, or like most modern ARs come with one of these type of, free floated handguards, you're going to have just a lot more ability to be modular, to change up your rifle, to customize it to exactly what works best for you. Now, being modern AKs are getting closer to that for sure. But there's one major problem. On an AK, you have this dust cover here. Now, putting a Picatinny rail on top of this and having it hold 0 every time you remove it and put it back on if you have to get in and clean the rifle, it has become a difficult thing for engineers to come up with. There are options where you have a hinge top cover. There are other things. You do have right here. This is actually a scope rail mount. Comes up over the top and you can mount an optic on it. So there are ways to do it, but it's just more difficult and complicated and generally not considered as precise as what you get with this. Another reason why this is more accurate, your handguard is free floated, meaning the barrel does not touch the handguard in any way. So whatever you are doing, holding this, putting it up against a barrier, it doesn't affect your barrel harmonics or anything like that. Now with an AK, not necessarily true. You have your gas block here. It's not free floated. When your hand is on here, your hand is literally on the barrel. And that is going to affect it in some small way, affecting accuracy to an extent. Now, this rifle is still going to be more accurate than 90% of shooters out there. 7.62 by 39 AK. So while I've got the top cover off here, we're going to talk about the actual operating system of each of these. So the AK is considered to be the most reliable, weapon system basically in the world. And the reason for that being it is very, very, very simple. There are not very many moving parts here. If you have a safety lever that is just huge, easy to actuate, not as easy as the AR, and we're going to talk about ergonomics in a moment. Side charging handle, you have a recoil spring here, comes out just like that. Here comes your bolt and carrier, and what you see on there is an op rod and a long stroke piston. So that runs right down your gas tube there. When the weapon fires, gas is siphoned off of the barrel through here, pushes on that piston, operating your bolt carrier group and cycling the weapon. In here you have your bolt, and this thing just twists right out, that simply. And it is just a very, very simple design. Look at all this space inside here. There is not much that can go wrong because of how simple it is. And there's something to be said for simplicity. It's very easy to maintain this, and that's part of the reason that so many countries throughout the world run this weapon system. They can give them to, to conscripts that have minimal training, and they can run this weapon and maintain it or not maintain it, and it's probably going to keep running reliably. That was the genius of Mikhail Kalashnikov's design in its simplicity. Oh, this thing's fun. So the AK being as simple as it is, the AR in contrast is a little more complicated. Now this is a fairly simple weapon system as well, and Eugene Stoner was a genius in his own right, and this thing has definitely stood the test of time, just as the AK has. But it is a little bit more complicated of a system. So you have back here, you have a rear charging handle. On the other side here, you have a bolt hold open, bolt release. That's something that the AK doesn't have. It's a really nice thing to have, but it's also one more thing making it more complicated. You have on this side is where your safety is. Very ergonomic and easy to actuate with your thumb. You can pull the rifle up, actuate the safety, pull the trigger very, very quickly and very easily, and run the safety right back off just as easily. You don't have to reach so far with your firing hand like you do with the AK. But the system itself is a little bit more complicated, and there's a reason why it's not considered quite as reliable. So this is what's called direct gas impingement. Now there's a gas block on this too. It's right here. This is a carbine length gas system. But there's no op rod and piston. There's a gas tube that runs back through here, and the gas is siphoned directly off from the barrel into the bolt carrier group itself through the gas key, which I'll show you right here. So this is the gas key. The gas goes into there, pushes on this bolt, and that is what cycles your weapon. Now you can see the bolt on here, has this star lug pattern. And when it gets pushed back, it turns and gets unlocked. When it comes back forward, it turns and locks itself in. And that is the most important part about the operating system of both of these rifles, is that the bolt comes in, turns, and locks those lugs so that when you fire a high pressure round, the gun doesn't blow up on you. Then the gas cycles each one of these weapons, and that's how the thing runs. Now the issue most people have with this system is the gas directly coming back into the bolt carrier group makes the action of the weapon very dirty very quickly. Now the AK doesn't really get any of those gases into the action. all those gases remain up here in the gas tube and really only act upon that piston. And so that's where its legendary reliability comes from. So we're going to say that's a point for the AK. So as far as bullet weight, I'd say a point for the AK. As far as accuracy and ability to shoot at distance, AR. Now, when it comes to reliability, we're going to give a point to the AK. But what about ergonomics? So this gun doesn't feel bad at all. Not at all. But you do have to get your face pretty dang close down to it to get on target on those stock sights. And if you see there, if I have this in my shoulder blade, I really do have to get my head pretty low on it. Now, I've got, an aftermarket pistol grip on here, but the standard ones that come on them are pretty thin. You can get, folding stocks and different types of things. You can even get buffer tube attachments and put AR style stocks on here. But there, you're trying to change it more like an AR. This is what an AK comes with generally, is a wooden fixed stock. And luckily, this one fits me very well. But if it doesn't fit you, it is what it is. Now let's see how the ergonomics look on an AR-15. So the ergonomics on an AR-15 are very customizable to the shooter. So I've put on a full-length free-floated handguard on this. This thing, I can get all the way out on here on it if I want. But I've also got a vertical grip. I can pull it back into my shoulder real easily. And if you look where my head is in relation to the rifle, with the height that most people generally mount optics, I've got a much more heads-up display. When I pull this up, it comes right up to my eye. I can shoot with both eyes open, and I don't have to get way down on the rifle in order to get a sight picture with it. It also has an adjustable length of pull with the stock from very, very close in if you want, all the way to way out there for much bigger guys. For me, it's somewhere in between. And the funny thing is, where I like this is actually the exact same length of pull as to what this just naturally is. So maybe I'm just lucky for the size that I am. They both work very well for me. But I do have to admit that the ergonomics of this do just feel more comfortable and more natural. Now, it took a little work. I had to put a pistol grip that was more vertical on it. I had to put this handguard on it. I had to put a different stock on it to make it as ergonomic and comfortable as it is for me. But that's the beauty of the AR-15, is that you can do that. It's so modular. You can literally, it's like Legos for adults. You can change out everything on this rifle to make it shoot exactly how you want and to make it fit you no matter what your body type or size is. And that's a really nice thing, to have something so customizable that you can make the rifle exactly yours. Whereas the AK, in most countries in the world, is a rifle that is pumped out, a zillion of them, exactly the same. They give them to guys on the front line, and you know how they use them. It's just different, And as much as I like this rifle, this one feels better to me. So for ergonomics, we're gonna have to go with the AR. And that's just me. Remember, all this is just my opinion. So what do we have? We've got reliability for the AK. We've got ergonomics and accuracy for the AR. We've got simplicity for the AK. So the AR-15 may be more, precise. It may have better ergonomics and be more modular, but there's a lot to be said for simplicity. And we all know the famous line that this weapon is so simple a child can use it, and they do. And it's one of the unfortunate realities of the world we live in, that there are child soldiers all over the world running these, fighting in different conflicts. It's a very sad reality, but it's true. And the thing is that they can run something like this, for one, because it is so simple. It takes minimal effort to maintain it and to keep it clean. it doesn't get gas back into the actual action, so you don't get nearly as much carbon and stuff in here that's gonna make your weapon malfunction. And there's really barely anything to it. You have this big safety, side charging handle, and you have a trigger. And that's all the controls on the AK. It's about the most simple semi-automatic, or in most cases, automatic weapon that there is. Whereas the AR has a lot more going on here. But with training, it's very simple and easy to use as well. So I'd like to know what you guys' opinion is. What do you like better, the AK or the AR? Tell me why. I'd really like to know. There's a reason that the United States of America has chosen the M4, M16, AR-15 type platform for so many years. And there's a lot of good reasons why most of the rest of the world has chosen the AK platform for so many decades. Now, I know you purists out there, this is not truly an AK-47. Like I said, it doesn't have a milled receiver. It was not made in 1947 and blessed by Mikhail Kalashnikov himself. This is an AKM. It's got a stamped receiver, and it's the AK modernized. And truly, this isn't actually an AR-15. AR stands for Armalite, which is the company that first produced the AR-15, Armalite Rifle Model 15. But there are many companies now that produce AR-15s. This is the M&P 15. And most of those companies have that kind of designation, whatever their brand is, 15, to designate that it's their version of the AR-15. The AK, produced in more countries, I think over 100 countries. And there's something like 100 million of these in the world. There are millions of these just in the United States alone. It's the most popular gun in our country. So, what's you guys' favorite? The AR or the AK? I can't pick a clear winner. I gotta say, I'm a little partial to the AR-15 just because I'm more comfortable with it. I have more experience with it. I've owned AR-15s for much longer than I have an AK. I got this one fairly recently. And I'm looking forward to getting more experience with this and getting more comfortable with it. I do gotta say, I love the way that the AK looks. It's got a very classic look to it. In fact, it's on the flag of a lot of countries because this weapon was instrumental in how those countries won their freedom. So, both of these things are timeless to an extent. They've stood the test of time, decades. And they're still being used today. They've proven themselves, proven and reliable. This one is known to be more reliable generally, but this one is not unreliable. This one is known to be more accurate generally, but this one isn't inaccurate. They both are very, very good fighting rifles. There's a reason why they're the two most popular ones probably in the world. So let me know your opinions. I would love to hear it. I hope you enjoyed this video about these. It was a little bit off the cuff, just what I thought about it. But it's fun to make. We're gonna have range footage in here of both of them today, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. Does the AK-47 need all the attachments and accessories like the AR-15 does? Yet, rifle is fine. As much as I love the AK, there's a lot to be said for a rifle custom built for you. And that drop-in trigger is amazing. I hope you guys enjoyed this video about ARs versus AKs from Sawtooth Tactical. Remember, hit up our Patreon. We're still working on getting everything on there, but it should be shortly. And any way that anyone can help to fund this channel and keep it going is greatly appreciated. So remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and stay strapped or get clapped. Thanks.